Parody.
Get away.
Parody.
Shut up. Oh. It came to my attention recently that there are those among you who believe that the flu vaccine is a means for administering a mind control drug into the United States citizenship. You fools! We would never use such an obvious method, and we've been in the mind control business for long enough now that we don't really need to. Let me share with you a bit of the history of the mind control project in the United States. It was Benjamin Franklin who first discovered that with the right combination of chemicals, an aroma could be created that, when inhaled, would so confound the senses that a person would be unable to resist any purchase that was within his or her financial ability. Whenever the ink he used in his printing press had this chemical added to it, he could not print enough copies to meet the demand. But when the compound was removed from the ink, sales plummeted. Years later, Henry Ford uncovered the formula as a bonus in the acquisition of a newspaper by his company, known as the Dearborn Independent. He tested it at his newspaper just as Franklin had done at his own. The results were amazing. It was a nothing newspaper. Hardly anyone read it when Ford purchased it, and it was on the verge of bankruptcy. But as soon as he began using Franklin's formula, sales went through the roof. And it didn't matter what ridiculous story they published. People couldn't resist buying it. But because of an extreme anti-Semitic theme in the paper, Ford was sued by one of the people his paper attacked, and in a secret meeting mediated by future President Franklin Roosevelt, the formula was handed over to the federal government. Ford would continue using a modified version of the formula to boost car sales. But beyond that, there isn't much more that he contributes to the story. In 1939, World War II broke out. At the advice of the scientific community, the formula's usefulness was explored as a means of breaking the will of our enemies. It was realized that killing off hundreds of thousands of their citizens might not be enough to sway their leadership, and the scientists went to work devising a method to incorporate Franklin's formula into the atomic bomb. The results were more than they could have hoped for. Portions of China, Vietnam, and Korea were also affected. In fact, large portions of the populations of several countries that the formula drifted across were significantly affected. India, Pakistan, and several other countries began to cry out for democracy. The formula was a success, but how could we deliver it in Europe? We couldn't use nukes so close to our allies. We tried several methods, but in the end, using it as a fuel additive was the best method for widespread transmission. But it wasn't as effective against the Germans as we had hoped. It wasn't until the 1970s that scientists working in secret laboratories discovered the reason for the failure: lead. Henry Ford, who had been friends with Adolf Hitler before the war, had encouraged the use of leaded gasoline in his vehicles. Lead vapor almost completely neutralizes the effects of the formula. Soon after this realization, the government and scientists began phasing out the use of lead in gasoline. And just to play it safe, they also began phasing out lead-based paints to prevent childhood immunities. So you see, you are already under our control. We control you, your Congress, your Senate, even the presidency. We had a problem controlling Bush. It took us a while to discover the reason for his resistance. Then we found his private stash of leaded gasoline hidden under a tarp in his garage in Texas. He had been huffing it religiously. Once we replaced it with unleaded fuel, he came in line. Ah, you think I'm making fun of your paranoia now, don't you? I just love how this stuff works.
Parody.
Get away.
Parody.
Shut up.
We are W. Bush of Borg. Resistance is futile, saith the Lord.